Alrighty guys, this is Snugsonblitz. Today we're going to be looking at the tech trees. Now there are a few reasons for that. First of all, I've noticed a lot of people are grinding different tech trees right now. Why? Well, because Wargaming has said that with Reforged coming out, if you have the top tank in the set, you'll automatically have the key to open it so you won't have to pay for that. That's great news. Wargaming has said, hey, keys, you'll have access to a lot of them, blah, blah, blah. But they've also, said that things will be limited. So I see a lot of people trying to quickly get tech trees done in order to save themselves trouble later on, which makes good sense. But that's not the reason why I put this video together. As you can see by the title of this video, it's about tech trees for newer players, aka noobs. I've seen some YouTubers put out some videos recently, and I went through them, and I agree with them somewhat, and I also disagree with them somewhat. So I thought I would share my perspective. That's why you're here, after all, right? Now, just to make things clear, I have a lot of battles. I only have one account. This is it. I've played on a few of my friends' accounts, maybe a handful of games just to try out a few tanks, but essentially I've played about 100,000 battles. Some of my friends have played on my account, so these aren't all my battles, to be fair, but that's okay. Now, if you're wondering why my masteries are so low, well, it's because a long time ago I used to play tanks and get a ton of masteries, but they didn't count. I would get one, and that would be it. And so I'd get 50 masteries in the SU-100 or 70 in the Comet, and it counted for one, so who cares? Whatever. I do not care about that stuff. And as you can see, I've played pretty much every tier. Way back when it was really hard, and I had to grind tiers 1 to 4. So yeah, there was a lot of effort in there compared to most players today, where they played maybe 10 games. Tier 5, again, quite a lot of battles for somebody today, but a long time ago, this was kind of standard. And pretty much even across the board between tiers 6, 7, 9, and 10. Why don't I play tier 10 as much? Just I've got to be in the mood. It's more tense, and I just want to take it easy most of the time. But yeah, I can play pretty much any tank from tier 6 to 10 and play it pretty well. That's all I care about. I don't care about having godly stats. Who cares? Just have a little bit of fun. And some games I'm like, hey, if you guys can't carry us to victory, I mean, I've done 3K, the rest is up to you, and they still managed to mess things up. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, oh well. Now, tier 6, I don't enjoy this tier that much these days, but it is my tier for helping people learn because I can easily carry in that tier. There's not much effort, and it's a really good way to get people to see how to play the game. Because they're not playing against a lot of pros who are running around in tier 10 or maybe tier 8 or tier 9. So tier 6 is a little bit more chill, and I don't care about my stats in tier 6. If they fall, who cares? I'm just trying to help people out. So if players who subscribe to my channel, if you're not subscribed, I do recommend it. You might want to add me, and then you can play a few games with me if you ask nicely. But that's in tier 6. Now, for people who want to play tier 7 through 10, I don't care if you're a good player or a great player. I'll help you, but you have to be a Patreon. That's the only thing I ask, because I want to help you become a better player, and I can go into depth of how to play this game and my belief and philosophy on this game and the psychology that goes into it. Why have I got 36,000 battles in tier 8? Because it's a tier I can make a frick ton of credits from. I mean, yeah, I'm cheap like most people are. I mean, look, I've got no premium days right now. I've got some coupons. I'll be using those here and there. But yeah, I don't try to spend that much money on this game. I try to play it, maybe 50, 70 bucks a year, maybe, if I can get away with it. A long time ago, I spent more because the grind was tougher, and picking up new tanks was a little bit pricey. But nowadays, I've just got so many premium tanks, I don't rush to pick up new ones. So anyway, the point is I'm trying to get across to you is I think I know what I'm doing in pretty much any tier from, well, all the way up. So I think I can help you choose tanks that I think will be good for you. But I think a lot of players who recommend tech trees have kind of forgotten what it's like to play in lower tiers and how bad some tanks are. I play tanks that I don't like all the time simply because I want to see how they are today compared to what they were before. And I like the challenge of trying to get my stats up. I mean, some tanks I absolutely screwed up my stats in the beginning, but who cares? It's just a game. I keep saying that. Anyway, let's finally get to the tech trees, right? And we're going to work our way through. We're going to start off with the American line, and I will give you my suggestions on which tech trees I think are must-have, and the other ones you can just take your time in picking up, and which are also, when I say must-have, I really think they're noob-friendly because people who've got reroll accounts and have played this game before, they already know which tech trees they want or which tanks they want. But if you're a newer player, you're probably wondering, well, what tank should I go for and which tank should I avoid? So I'm just trying to give you my opinion. Now, one last thing, and then I promise we'll get to it, and that is X Factor, the X Factor. You can check my video on it. I've said it time and time again, but for newer players, armor is the X Factor. Armor will get you 1 to 2 bounces more per game, and speed, on the other hand, will absolutely screw you. I can say this because that happened to me. I started off with fast tanks, got absolutely screwed, dead, wasn't having that much fun, switched to heavy tanks, and I was like, whoo, look at this, bing, 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 bing. I felt like I was RoboCop or the Terminator, just shells just bouncing off me left, right, and center. And that was a whole lot of giggles. So, if the tech tree line does not have much armor, it's probably not going to get selected. And of course, one other thing, if you don't have a turret, it definitely hurts your chances to getting into this list. Yeah. So let's get to it, shall we? Which lines do I recommend here? Well, the E4 line. It's a little bit interesting because the tier 6 tank has no armor. Well, it has a little bit actually, ever since they give it a buff. The T25 has some armor, and then you get to these kind of armored sort of beasts, much slower. These are much faster, especially the Hellcat, which is kind of a speed demon. I would say this is a must-have line. Why? Because the gun can absolutely pen pretty much everything you want out there. They competitive against when they're placed lower tier. Yeah, and having a turret makes it easier for you to play. You do not want to do the E3 line. No, just skip it. No turret, too slow. Yeah, very positional. No. E5 line. This line, I think, is one of the best in the entire game. Why? Well, because pretty much every one of these tanks is competitive, minus maybe the M103, but it's still an okay tank. It's just lost a lot of its luster. I hope they give this some love. They did for the ST1 and the IS-8 in 2024. Let's hope they do that for this tank this year. I'm expecting they do because it's kind of gotten lost. You very rarely see them on the battlefield, except if someone's grinding the line. So yeah, but T29, very strong. M6, solid. T32 can be very strong as well. And the E5 can do a little bit of everything there. Not super slow. I mean, T29 and T32, not great. M6 also a little bit sluggish. M103, E5, quite decently fast. But yeah, they're competitive. And therefore, they get my seal of approval. So that's the second tech tree of the American line. What about the Yo? Well, Tier 10, I think, is great. Tier 8 is okay. Tier 7, not really. And Tier 9, yeah, maybe better than the M103, but it's slow. And I think that's a negative. So I'm going to give this one a pass. But if you need a 3-shot auto-loader tank, yeah, this would be the line to go through because it is a very competitive line. So I'm going to put that in the iffy. Okay, what about the M40 pattern? If you like a medium line, the tanks are consistent, but they don't have enough armor, especially from tier 6 through 9. I think you will struggle, especially if you're a newer player. You'll get frustrated. So I would give this a pass. T57, I love this tank. I think it's a great tank, but the line is a little bit tough just because of the way it shifts from light to mediums to heavy. So not consistent, making it harder to play. And yeah, I think it'll cause more trouble. So this is unusual. It's unique in the game. I think it's the only line like that. It shifts so much. So I'd give this one a pass. And the last one, the Sheridan line. If you must have a light line, I guess this is the one to go for. But I would just give it a pass because no armor means nothing for new players. But if you must have a light line, I think this is maybe one of the better ones, just because of the derp guns from here to here. And these tanks actually have troll armor, amazingly. That's something a lot of people don't realize. But I would not recommend this line for newer players. Sorry. Moving on to the German line, and here we have a bit of a problem. We have a light line, which is very tough to play. The Leopard is a fantastic tank. Not the grind is horrific. E50M also pretty horrific as well. But the E100 line, we'll come back to in a second. The mouse is very, very slow. Not really for newer players. VK72 in that side scraping ability from 45 doesn't really translate exactly into the VK. This is a confusing line for new players. Give that a pass. The Jaegeru, if you want tank destroyer line, I say this is one of the best out there. Skip the Ferdinand, go for the J Panther 2, but they're consistent, they're strong, and the guns do work. The Yak Tiger, I think, is a standout, one of the best tanks, tier for tier. Absolutely a must-have tank in your garage. So I'm going to give this actually my seal of approval here. Grill, no armor, solid pass. But what about this line, the E100? Well, this is a gem of a line. Oh my goodness me, because there's no bad tank. Every one of these tanks is competitive today. Every one of these tanks can carry your team to victory. Tiger 2 is a standout in Tier 8. E75, maybe it's lost a little bit of its luster, but it's still a very strong tank. E100, two types of guns. You can try them out. You can have the fast firing, high DPM, or big derpy gun. Both are crazy fun. Yeah, I would say this is probably the best line in the entire game, followed by the E5. Anything else? Let's take a look at the Soviet line. Well, we'll skip this line again. Light tanks, very tough to play. Nope, skip that. T62 line, medium. I'm not sure why, although on paper the T62 is better. For some reason, a lot of people seem to do better in the Object 140. If you need a medium tank line, this may be one of the best to go for. Kind of consistent, but again, you're going to get frustrated, especially in Tier 8. But not a bad line. Doesn't really make my list of must-have tech trees, but if you need a medium line, this is one to consider. IS-4. A shell of its for myself, not bad, but not great. It needs to get back that ability to hold a corridor. ST1 is improved, that's nice. These two tanks are the problem, very slow and sluggish, and not really that competitive in today's meta against a lot of strong tanks out there. So get that one best. The IS-7 line, well, it's kind of like an E100 line. The tanks are all consistently strong. KV-1S, strong in Tier 6. IS can do the business. IS-3, it's underrated. It's not bad. It has lost a lot of its luster, but still not too bad. IS-8, it's been improved. The only thing is this is a little bit more like a heavium, so I think it confuses people. But I think this is not a bad line. I would say so far, E100 first, E5 line second, and the IS-7 line third. Okay, what about tank destroyers? 263, no. It's really tough for a lot of people to play these tanks. Very, very tough, so I'll give this one a pass. This line is not bad. If you want to have a little bit of crazy fun, the SU-152 is a lot of fun with that derp gun. If you like the kind of sneaky sniper type playstyle, I think this is a good line for you because you can reposition your tank and you've got a little bit more camo than, for example, a Jaegeru or a Yak Tiger. Not a bad line, but it doesn't make my cut. What about British tanks? Well, quite simply, you can give all of these a pass. I do like the Vickers Light line, but you've got to know what you're doing. I think the FV4202 is a fantastic tank, but again, you need to know what you're doing. This line doesn't have much armor. That gives it a pass. This line doesn't have a turret, although DPM is great. Most new players don't understand that. They'll sit back, let their team fall apart, and then they'll just get thrashed by 2 or 3 medium tanks swarming them and ripping them apart. So no. Although the 183 is crazy fun, and it has been buffed, so it is a kind of must-have tank, but this line is a tough grind. What about this line? Give it a solid pass. Yes, I think these two tanks are easy to play. Just be quite aggressive in them, and you should be fine. But quite dull around here. This is not a fun tank. Conqueror, yeah, you can't play it quite like these tanks. It's more of a finesse tank, and so is this. So, no. Finesse is not something newer players have, so give it a pass. What about this line? Well, the Hori line is to me a worse Jaegeru line. Yeah, the Hori is a fantastic tank. Pen is incredible, off the charts. But I do think the Jaegeru line is better. The Tier 9 is just a standout, as I said. The Yag Tiger, fantastic. The J Panther is much better. J Panther 2 is much better than the Hori. And the J Panther, I think, is better than the Cheeto SPG, in my opinion. So, not as good. What about medium line? No, 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 and no, dear Lord. Very tough to play if you don't know what you're doing. No armor. Very, very tough to play. Great gun, but no armor. So solid pass on this line. Although the STB is a great tank. What about this line? Well, first of all, they're very similar in playstyle. The armor does work, except maybe the Juto. I would say this is kind of a must-have line. I would say E100 first, followed by the E5 line, and then the question is, do you want to have the IS-7 or the Type 71? In my opinion, I think I'll go for the Type 71 line because the armor is super troll. GSA is very competitive in Tier 8, much more so than the IS-3, I think. And the Type 68 has fantastic pen if you use Pramo. So I would put that in third place, and fourth place would be the IS-7 line. Moving on to the Chinese tanks. Any line I recommend here? Light tanks, skip, very, very tough to play with no gun depression. Mediums, I mean, the 121 is a fantastic tank, but tough to play. I had a horrendous run in this tank. My goodness me, my teams were horrific. But I still think it's a fun tank if you know what you're doing. Got sidetracked there, I apologize. WZ-113, another standout tank, but the line is not fun at all. The IS-2 has a very, very troll gun. You got to aim it all the way, otherwise you shoot to the moon. BZ-75, derpy, heaven, fun stuff in here, but not good for newer players. Decently strong armor, but no, I think there are better lines out there, so give it a pass. This tank line is very strong. I do think the standouts are in Tier 8 and Tier 10. Does it get my seal of approval? I think it's just slightly behind the Hori line. I'd go for the Hori line over this line, just that much. I can't explain why. Let me think about it. Or yeah, yeah. About even. Okay, I'm gonna go. Hori line and this line are equal. There's Hori and WZ to me are equal. Tier 9, I'm gonna give it to the Hori ever so slightly, but the Tier 8 I'm giving it to WZ. Tier 7, two very different tanks. One is more of a sniper, invisible sniper, and the other one's a little bit got better armor and can be a bit more aggressive. So about equal, I would say. Neither are on the level of the Jaegeru line or what else is there? I forgot. I'll figure it out. Oh, the Object 268 line. I think those are the two standout tank destroyer lines. Foch, decently strong. Definitely improved since it came out. I would say this is just slightly below the WZ and the Hori line. So that does not get my seal. This line just doesn't have enough armor for new players, although 3 shells can be absolutely deadly. I wouldn't recommend this for newer players. Bad chat, no. This line is horrible for newer players because they've got no armor. You're going to get HE'd all the time and not know why you're dying so quickly. And the Marat, I think, is a standout tank. I really like this tank. Project Louis, underrated. You rarely see it on the battlefield. Why? Because most people are not playing this line. And that tells you something right there. I think this is a fun tank. Sorry, a fun line. And if you know what you're doing, you'll have fun with it. But yeah, I would give it a pass if you're a newer player. And finally, we come to the European nations. And there are some good lines here. This line is kind of dull. It's medium, and they do play similarly, but yeah, it's not really anything special to write home about. I would just give them a pass. Projected 46, the auto reloader from tier 8 to 10 is crazy fun. The problem is that tier 6 and 7 are nothing great, but that's to be expected. You can't have every tank being amazing. I would say this is a must-have line, actually. Yeah, just because of the auto reloader system, it is a lot of fun, and if you know what you're doing, you have a lot of fun. But yeah, I wouldn't play this until you've done the heavy tank lines that I said. So bear that in mind. The Reno Sarante is a great tank. Tier 9 is also very solid. Tier 8 is okay. I mean, they're just kind of dull. So I would say This is probably around maybe the 6th line I would recommend you go down. 5th or 6th maybe. Solid line, just not that much fun. PvP, a great tank, always been tough. Tanks are quite consistent all the way through, decently competitive. Ever since they gave this tank a buff, it used to stink, but doesn't make my cut. Lack of gun depression for these tanks is slightly challenging. I don't think it does. Slightly hard for new players, so I'd give this one a pass, but a very solid one. The VZ55 is a standout now ever since they gave it 2 shells. Rest of the line, very, very dull, and in my opinion, just go for the IS line. Just doesn't feel anything special. Meh sort of line. Sorry, that's my opinion. 60 TP, well, this line, tier 6 and 7, they're competitive, but dull and boring. But from tier 8 to 10, fantastic, and that's why these tanks get my seal of approval, and I would say these are must-have. So where would I put it? I'm going to go with the E100 line as the best line for no players, followed by, surprisingly, I'm going to say the 60 TP. Yeah, I think this line is very strong because it's got armor, decently fast. You can have some very good bounces in these tanks. The 60 TP, unfortunately, are going to get ammo racked. That's going to be painful, so I'm not sure you're going to love that. Sometimes it's very frustrating, but still a great line to have. So that moves into 2nd place. Then E5, 3rd place, and IS7, 4th place. Oh, sorry. Type 71, 4th place, and IS7, 5th place. What about the Kranwagen? Well, the problem is these guys switch from kind of medium tanks to heavy tanks, a little frustrating. These tanks are very strong. The mill used to be amazingly strong, but now it's just strong. The auto loader system is interesting. I do think you might get in trouble if you don't know what you're doing in tiers 9 and 10. You need to know good positioning. I would say it is a must-have, but not until you've played the other lines that I've suggested. So maybe 6th, I would say this is the line you've got to go down 6th. And the Minotauro line, very strong armor, solid armor, very strong armor, it used to be anyway. Solid armor, hull down, these are great. And the Basotto is a standout. This is also a great line. Just don't fire that 3rd shell. Otherwise you will get screwed. I mean, if you have the opportunity to fire it, I guess you could. Just make sure you have plenty of time to reload and your team's not falling apart when you do so. I would say this is a great line. I would put it somewhere around 6th, 7th, or 8th, somewhere around there, around the Reno Sante level. But I think you got to go with the E5 line first because that will teach you all about gun depression. So there you have it. Those are my recommendations, which lines you should go down and kind of in which order. Of course, you may disagree with me. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you do. Feel free to, in the comments below, let me know what you think are the best 5 tech tree tank lines to go down. I've shared my 5 and thrown in a few others, as well as some tank destroyers and medium tanks lines that you might want to consider. As I said before, armor is the X factor. It will keep you on the battlefield longer than you should be on the battlefield as a newer player. Newer players need that to stay competitive and alive in games. If they play tanks with no armor, they're just going to get hit by everybody and not understand how to play their tanks and get very frustrated and want to quit the game. In my opinion, light tanks are the last type of tanks you want to go down. If you must go for one, I suppose the Sheridan line is the best of the light tanks just because of that derp gun will keep enemies at bay, and you can really ruin some tanks' days with these tanks, but you've got to understand how to use them well. Chaffee and Bulldog, well, not easy if you're a new player. Now, I don't like the Chaffee, but just so you know, does it say my stats? Yeah, 67% of my Chaffee. I hate the tank. I don't like it, and yet I'm 67. So, yeah, in Tier 6, I don't find it hard to play. Sometimes I lose, of course. I'm not a god. I am very aggressive. I do push it a little bit too hard, too quick, but I just have a little bit of fun. So, anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Am I completely off my rocker, or do you agree with me? And again, you put your order, which tech tree tank lines you think are good for new players. I'd love to hear from you. And tomorrow, or maybe the day after, I'm gonna have an updated premium tank list that I think you should pick up, like must-have premiums or something like that. So keep your eye out for that. Um, Tanks change and the meta changes. So yeah, it's good to do a bit of an update every year or so. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you next time. Snugsonblitz out.